So my name's Ward Simmons. I'm one of the Dharma leaders, one of the teachers that rotate responsibility for Wednesday night sessions at the Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. Tonight, we have a very special opportunity. Tonight, our speaker will be Phillip Moffitt. He'll be leading our session tonight. And it's an honor for me to introduce Phillip. So there's a lot that can be said about Phillip. He is a distinguished businessman. He is a distinguished Dharma teacher. He is a distinguished author. He is a distinguished advisor. And all those are significant accomplishments. But what I want to say about Phillip, by way of introduction, is a little bit more personal, and it's about my own personal experience of him. So when I first started meditating, I started attending retreats, residential retreats up at Southern Dharma Retreat Center outside of Asheville. And I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was just casting about, trying out different teachers, trying to find my way around. And so the schedule came out, and there was a guy named Phillip Moffitt, and I thought, well, okay, I'll give that a try. That was 20 years ago this year. And when I showed up and I went to the opening talk on the first night of the retreat, I knew that for me, his way of teaching was quite what I needed. I knew that he was going to be an important teacher, and I hoped he was going to be an important teacher for me in my life. And I just want to name quickly, you didn't come to hear me, you came to hear Phillip, but I just want to name quickly what I think those characteristics are that make him so special. The first thing I noticed about him was that he was knowledgeable. He worked hard, he studied hard, and he mastered the subject matter he was presenting. And that was very satisfying for me for a number of years. And then the next thing I noticed was that he was really wise, that he was intuitive, that he had a knowing that inspired me. And inspired me to want to practice and move in that direction. And that was wonderful for several years. And then I noticed, as you get to know somebody better, you start to notice things, seeing them in environments that you don't get to see them otherwise. I noticed that he was extremely ethical, that he was very careful, and he was very particular. And he made decisions that aligned with the Dharma, even in very challenging situations. And I've appreciated that for several years. But maybe the most important thing that I appreciate about Phillip now is his kindness and his caring, because he genuinely cares about other people that he's interacting with and that he's teaching to. And so that's a pretty desirable set of characteristics. He's got a lot to live up to tonight. My relationship with him has been extraordinarily beneficial for me, and I hope his time with us tonight is beneficial for you. So with that, we will welcome Phillip Moffitt.
Thank you, Ward. I wondered why you stuck around all of these years. I have enjoyed my time with Ward, and we have had quite an adventure together as Ward has found his own path through the Dhamma, and I've really enjoyed watching that maturation happen. I don't have very many people that I can give a lot of personal attention to just because my time is so consumed and more in the larger trainings and teachings that I do, so that so that awards one of the sort of a fewer number of people that I've gotten to work with personally. I'm moving my microphone closer just to make sure. Scott, are you able to hear okay? Is there something I can do to help? Can you hear okay, Scott? Okay. Yeah, and if you're having trouble, signal me. I keep my eyes closed during the meditation, so unfortunately, if I get quiet there, you have to suffer through it.
All right, thank you.
Otherwise, yeah,
I'll
great.
do that.
Okay, good. And same with anyone else. And I'm not all set up in some super professional way. I've got a microphone that's supposedly a good microphone, but I was not interested in, I'm not a production. I'm just a Dharma teacher, so I don't want to suddenly get a different identity because we're on Zoom nowadays. So with my whole interest in my life since 40, and I'm now in my mid-70s, has been of being of service to others. And I did not know that it was going to take the form of so significantly of my time of being a Dharma teacher, but it did turn out that way. And it's been an honor and a blessing in my own life. And so I'm here with you tonight in that way, as I am a practitioner of the Dhamma, and I on occasion teach, but I am a practitioner 24/7. And my attitude is towards the wholeness of life here and now, and not just this ultimate liberation that does happen in stages. I think that's my own experience suggests this is a genuine teaching that really happens that way. But I'm interested in all of our lives 24/7, so that we're living values-based lives, that we have mindfulness, that we have a sense of presence that does what for us? It gives us choice. Choice of what? What kind of choice? What does he mean by choice? Choice to be first of all, to have the empowerment, the agency empowerment, to be able to recognize what is suffering and not suffering. As understood from Buddhist psychology, but mostly understood from your own experience. When are we causing suffering or not causing suffering? When is that? When we start to be able to really see, oh, this doesn't feel like suffering right now, but I've been here before, and always before it was suffering, so there's a good chance it's suffering now, either for me or someone else, although I may not feel it till later, or they may not feel it later, or I may not be able to experientially feel them right now, but they report to me it's suffering. So we recognize what is suffering, and then we have the clarity of values that we prefer non-suffering. That's an insight. That is a level of spiritual maturity. And it keeps getting more and more subtle and more clear that we prefer non-suffering. I don't want to spend my life causing suffering to myself or another. And the rewards, the short-term immediate rewards that I might choose, they might be pleasant enough in the moment, but in the end, it's suffering. And so we know, based on what is important to us, that we want to choose non-suffering, and we realize we do have a choice. And we practice to have more recognition, more clarity, and more choice. That's why we practice. And then as we realize we have choice, we then also gain this ability to choose non-suffering. Unfortunately, at least in my experience with myself and now a large, some thousands of people, there's a gap between when first of all, it's very hard to have enough mindfulness to recognize what's suffering and non-suffering. So there's a gap right there. And then to realize, oh, but there's a choice here, because usually we get so caught in the story that we're halfway down the road, and it's all a little late. But we always at any point want to be able to stop. And then, so there's gaps along the way until where we get a certain level of knowledge and then being able to live out that knowledge. And people get discouraged. And I'm going to be doing the meditation tonight about how we align ourselves. We can align ourselves every day in our own home practice and not necessarily spend a lot of time doing it. But we can align ourselves every day that we become people who aspire, based on our values, which in good old common sense, that we are able to recognize suffering and non-suffering, and recognize that we have the ability to choose, to actually make the choice. We can do that every day in some small way. And if we do this every day in some small way, it's like turning a ship in the ocean. The slightest turning of that wheel in the wheelhouse takes the big ocean liner in a dramatically different place over a period of time. And it's the same way with our own development. Just the smallest changes, so small you would go, this is not getting me anywhere. Nah, I can't do enough to make a real difference in my life. Misperception. That consistent small change, day after day after day, leads us somewhere very different. And different in what way? In terms of well-being, in terms of feeling that we are less and less defined by our clinging mind, less and less inclined out of wanting, out of tanha, out of thirst, to choose things that really are suffering, even though they may be pleasant in the moment, or we may feel very righteous in why we can be angry or have this aversion. We more and more are disenchanted by those things that lead us to suffering. Mental suffering, heart suffering, body suffering. We more and more start to have this immersion of a well-being that is less and less dependent on conditions. For real, not as theory. Not as theory, for real. For real. We move in this way of meeting life on the street of life to these profound understandings in the way that I approach this, rather than saying, oh, here's all these profound understandings, now make your life fit those profound understandings. Start with your actual experience and see what's suffering and non-suffering, and you evolve. Really, you would on your own without even any help, but much slower and hard. I certainly needed help. We evolve an understanding that is an overarching understanding, but it's not rigid belief or theory. It's based on our own life experience. And so that is my direction in terms of the way I approach the Dhamma. And I say this to you because I have been to your Sangha once before, many years ago now, and I have fond memories of that, and I really appreciate that your practice. So I am here to serve your practice and as best I'm able. And I'm going to do that in 3 ways. First, by this guided meditation, and it will be guided. It will be guided for much of it. There'll be pieces of quiet, and then I'll talk again in quiet there. And I am directing you from within the experience. I'm going inside my own practice, and I'm directing you from my own practice as to where I am in a way that is more transmission than it is instruction oriented. So that's what I'll be doing in the meditation, and it'll be about 35 or 40 minutes, depending on how we feel as a group in the electronic field of Sangha. And then I will do a Dharma talk of some length, and then a period of question and answer. And in that question and answer, I'm hoping you will really speak within the range that you feel safe speaking, but really speak with authenticity about your questions. I really hope you'll do that. I'm certainly available to meet you wherever you are. I don't think you're supposed to be someplace. One of the points of liberation I've experienced is that every moment of our lives is worthy of mindfulness. Every moment. I mean, like even these terrible moments when you're going, oh, I am so screwing this up. It's worthy of mindfulness in its own right of being known and being met with kindness. And there starts to evolve. Ward mentioned ethics. There starts to evolve a kind of dignity, an inner dignity, so laced with the mindfulness, an inner dignity, and a sense of ethics. There's an ethical stance that comes with that dignity. That's kind of not based on our personality, but it's something larger. It's like we're living something larger than our our wanting minds don't just disappear, but we start to have a new relationship with them. It's mysterious how that happens. So with that as an introduction, if you use your eyes closed, if not closed, then down at a 45-degree angle. I like people keeping their screens open unless they are moving around. I know some of you are on your phones or something like that, and that's okay too. But I think it's nice for the Sangha to see each other. So, insofar as you're comfortable with that, and if you need to do something that would be disturbing to people or keeping their eyes open, you could just click your screen at that time. So we begin. Arriving where? Arriving here. Arriving when? Now. Here and now. Arriving in this moment. Meaning that our attention is collected in this moment. We are here and now. We are present. And we know we are present. There is a felt sense of here and now. A felt sense of being present. Trust that you can feel this. Just trust. Open to the felt sense that you're present. Your attention is present. And you are capable of knowing that your attention is present. Here, now. Mindfulness is front and center. Here, now. The felt sense is just how you feel it. There's no right way or wrong way. You feel yourself present. Here, you're in the now. In the room you're sitting, and all the conditions around you, your capacity of knowing, of being conscious, is here, and you're awake to it in this moment, here, now. This can bring about physiological change in the body. It can calm the mind. It can brighten the mind. The heart can get lighter. All sorts of chemical changes in the body. There's mental recognition. That's very useful. And there's this felt sense, which even if it's a mental kind of recognition, even that has a felt sense. I often find myself starting to smile for no reason other than there is presence. Consciousness is being known here and now. Reflecting for a moment on what's called wise view in the Eightfold Path. You have chosen to be here and now because of your aspiration, your wise aspiration, however you might name that. But you can feel in the mind-heart some wholesome motivation. We are aligning with that wholesome motivation, that aspiration. For me, I term it being available to the Dharma. If you use the word Dharma, same word, just different language. The sense of available. In this moment, am I available to the Dharma? Meaning available for insight to arise. Meaning being available to be able to choose while being connected to your heart's choice. Being available to choose based on clear comprehension and not all the waves of emotion that arise and pass. Available, available, available. And then the intention of this very moment. We, in our practice, desire more clarity, more freedom in this moment, we manifest these deep intentional values. For the Buddha, it was non-harming, kindness, and the value of restraint, so that when sense, pleasure, desire arose, or fear and aversion arose, or delusion arose, that there was enough sense of restraint in the mind-heart that one could renounce that desire, that aversion, not in some big heroic way, but just plain old on the street of life. So much true courage. So much true courage when one is willing to be in the here and now and make conscious choice. No matter how many times one fails to live up to that, the courage to start again, to start over. Wow. Available to the Dhamma feels like this. Here and now, it feels like this. Arriving, aligning, being available. We turn now to experiences, just as the Buddha taught in the Satipatthana Sutta, the foundations of mindfulness. So we turn to the physical body. As practice, we notice the felt sense of the body. How do we know there's a body? The sensations of body. Sometimes it's an overall felt sense of the shape and form of body. Sometimes it's a whole field of sensations. Sometimes it's one very specific sensation, or all of those combined in some way. We can recognize that this capacity of consciousness is embodied here and now in our bodies. This consciousness that's subtle, that allows us to have choice, to not just be one more animal responding to pleasant and unpleasant, or to our training, or to our habits, or what someone's told us, but in our own knowing from heart and mind. There's consciousness embodied here and now that allows choice, that allows caring, that can allow the judging mind and the comparing mind to take a rest, so that we're just with the direct experience, not our views and opinions. Oh, if I could only sit straighter. Oh, if my knee didn't hurt. Oh, if I wasn't so tired from the day. Not interested in all of that. It will come, and we let it go. We're interested in this sense, the felt sense of being present in the body. The body feels like this. Each of us is a participant observer. It's not knowing there is a body in the sense that the barcode reader knows that Oreos cost $3.49. A container of milk, $2.69. It's the felt sense that knows what milk and Oreos taste like together. The felt sense of milk and Oreos. That's aliveness. This felt sense. The observer knows that there's knowing occurring. The observer knows there is choice. The observer has enough space around experience so it can recognize what's suffering and not suffering, and then choose. Wow. So we're always on this ever-moving scale between being immersed in the participation where we sometimes get lost, and then other times too removed where we've kind of tuned out from our body or from our emotions. So it's not a fixed participant observer, but an ever-flowing on the street of life, the river of life, ever-flowing. If you will, please, give this the hint of a smile, of appreciation for the body. So amazing, this kind of consciousness, these capacities of awareness. That we have access to. Amazing. We get lost in the narratives of our lives. We utilize story, sometimes wisely, so often not wisely. And we get lost in our views and opinions on whether something's pleasant or unpleasant, like the second foundation of mindfulness. Or we get lost in our moods, our emotions, like the third foundation of mindfulness. But we don't have to. Being here and now gives us that choice. Here, right now, right here, right now. You can know yourself knowing your experience. Just in the body. And now, if you will, please direct your attention towards a specific body experience around the wind element, what we call breath. The body has a certain stillness. The breath reflects this wind element. The stillness of the body is the earth element. In contrast, is the movement of the wind element known through the breath, if you're comfortable meditating on the breath. If not, stay with the body sensations. Allowing the breath to breathe you. Receiving the experience of breath as it arises, has a duration, and ceases. Each inhale, arising, having a duration, ceasing. The felt sense. Here and now, knowing the felt sense. The inhale feels like this. Not the story. It may be hard for you to breathe. Or you may have this whole history of learning how to control the breath or whatever. Perfectly valid to consider, but not now. Now you're experiencing like you've never experienced a breath before. Receiving, receiving, receiving. Allowing, allowing, so that you can receive it. The same with the exhale. The beginning of the exhale. Its duration. And its cessation. Thoughts may intrude. When you become aware that thinking is occurring, just pause briefly. You're not mad at those thoughts. They're not the enemy. But recognize in the pause that you have a choice. What does having a choice feel like? It comes from being here and now. The immediacy that gives you the choice to go back to the breath. That's so much more interesting than what it is that pulled you away. And then choose. something being known in the felt sense. This is the participant. What's being known, being recognized, and knowing that it's being recognized. This is the observer. Not identities, but the way reality manifests moment to moment. And we, each of us, can be more and more in harmony with this arising and passing being known. And the knowing being known. When we meditate, we start where we are. The one who's a little hazy, that's who meditates, if that's who's present. The one who's got restless mind meditates. We start where we are. We don't wait. We don't try to force a new, improved version of ourselves. But we come to the immediacy of the moment, just as we are. And at least for a brief moment, we are present with what's arising. So powerful. This persistence, this patience, to start again and to start over. This is your human gift. Staying with the breath. To be more stable, sometimes what's best is the body breath, where we're feeling the breath in the body. And sometimes the body is more in the foreground, and other times the breath. But we're feeling the breath in the body, either in the belly or the chest, the throat, the tip of the nostrils, or the whole body as the breath comes in and out like the tide at the beach. with whatever degree of steadiness of mind, feeling collected and unified in the mind, no matter how briefly. If you will, soften into the experience you're having. It's as though your mind is not pushing against it, it's not pulling the experience, it's not trying to control it. It rests gently on the experience you're having in such a way that it becomes more sensitive and therefore can soften into the experience and be more deeply involved, have more insight about it. Just this feeling of softening. You don't have to know what I mean. Just invite, may I soften into this experience of breath body. When mind wanders, pause, recognize your choice, and know what it feels like to just choose because you can to go back to the breath based on your values. This intention to be present so that you have choice. Sometimes a great sense of, it's called the beautiful breath, may arise, or an overall blissful feeling, or a feeling of great quiet, or great stillness, or of euphoria, of sweetness. Of ease. These wholesome experiences arise due to causes and conditions, and they will pass. But when they're here, we receive them in this felt sense way. And we know we're having the experience. And we know that we know. If you will, please, drop your attention into your heart space, that caring space, that capacity of caring. That availability of caring. The way we're so available to a small child, seeing them play or being in pain. The way we are when we're loving to ourselves or to another. The ways that we care about our community, our Sangha, our city. That felt sense of the heart space. Trust that you can feel it. Don't question, just trust. The patience to be with what is, the persistent to start over through mindfulness, being present here and now, allows us to walk the Dhamma path just as we are. So often we underestimate our own capacity. We don't trust enough to let it emerge. So ironic. Feel that possibility just now that you can trust, You can have a felt sense. So humble. And yet that little bit of presence, that little bit of commitment, that little bit of awareness, of mindfulness, of clarity of value, so modest. But it makes all the difference. It's on retreats. Sometimes it's the person who has never been on a retreat, never read a book. They just wanted to go see what this meditation stuff was. And because they have beginner's mind, they have what we call don't know mind, and at least they call that in Korean Buddhism. They're just available to themselves because they don't yet have any kind of identification, any story about what they can't do. So therefore they just do because they don't know that later on they're going to think it's hard to do, and it'll be much more difficult to do later on what they're doing right now with no training. And we're all like that, We get in our own way. Nelson Mandela talked about that in relation to being afraid of our capacity, coming from that wonderful Toni Morrison poem about that what we're most afraid of is not our inadequacy, but our capacity. I have found that to be true. Our stories, in one sense, keep us safe. In another sense, really keep us from possibility. And so we explore. We just explore as best we can. It's not I'm going to conquer the world. It's much more modest. But in that modesty, we can keep it up. Those big heroic moments, we can't sustain them. But just this steady being available. I really want to be available for what my mind, heart is capable of. What is its expression, its knowing internally, and therefore then manifesting externally. But what is this? What is this? This human birthright. What is this? And again, I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to have a felt sense and know it directly. Vipassana is a direct knowing. It's a rising of insight, like turning on a light or a flash of lightning. Or you just, I get it. The dots connect. There it is. And then we lose it, and we'll have to find it again. But gradually, it all elevates itself. It just elevates. Just plain old folks. You don't become extraordinary. You're still the plain old folks. But something's a little different. After a period of time, something's a little more different. It's very mysterious, but very lawful. It's not magical. I am not a believer in magic, except in the theater. And that mysterious, though, is very reliable. And therefore, we don't have to figure it out. And we get so seduced in thinking, I've really got to know what this is, because how can I know I can trust it? What if I get it wrong? Or I got to have it right. I need a guarantee here. Not knowing we're demanding a guarantee, but because we're not trusting our own capacity of knowing. The Buddha knowing the Dhamma is that knowing capacity in you, you as you are, knowing the truth of experience, of consciousness and its relationship to objects. That's the Buddha knowing the Dhamma. Getting more and more wise, having more and more your knowing of your experience laced with your caring in such a way that this recognition of suffering and non-suffering, you just start to see it more and more. And even though it may be something it's really seductive to you, gradually, even that which is most seductive to you, whether it's alcohol or in my case being right, I really have a great fondness for being right. And gradually you start to get a degree of disenchantment, of being disenchanted with whatever it is, getting status, getting more material things, or being people recognizing you and your family, that you're the one who holds the family together. All of that, it doesn't go away. It's just that our relationship to it starts to change. We don't believe our own stories in the same way. We still have preferences. We're not trying to get rid of preferences, although there's a lot of teaching out there that says, oh, no preference, no problem. It's changing our relationship to that preference. We still prefer it, but we don't idealize our preference. We don't idealize getting the preference. And then gradually, preferences matter less on their own, where we're not having to practice with them. We start having a new relationship that somehow flowered on its own. It's like, you put a seed in the ground, and if the conditions are right, the flower blooms, or you get some great tasting carrots, whatever it may be, an apple, because you planted the seed and you were working with the conditions, but you weren't making that seed blossom, but you were part of the conditions. And that's the unfolding. That's the unfolding in this way. So for just a moment, let's just move your body in some way. You can stand up for a moment and sit down, whatever. Just turn, whatever's good for you. Thank you. If it's appropriate wherever you are and you're not going to upset other members of your family, you can even make a little noise like Om or something like that, just to just to let all this move through. So, really arriving. I've been teaching retreats for 20 plus years. I don't know exactly how many now. And I will ask people, tell me what you do when you sit down to meditate. Well, I do this. And I say, so do you know that you're sitting down to meditate? Like, are you aligning that this is what you're doing? How long in your meditation before you actually notice, oh, now really what I'm meditating and I'm aligned with meditating. And, it can be on a 40-minute sit that you kind of got there halfway through or the last 10 minutes because, we have habits of mind that are jumping around. And so what I've found is this arriving is a way that gets us started. It's like collecting and unifying the mind in one place and then saying, okay, well, now that I've got my mind together, what am I doing with it? Oh, I'm being present. I'm not just being present like well, this fantasy is really an interesting fantasy. Oh boy, I love planning. We do all that already. We don't need to practice that. But no, I'm aligning with my deepest values. I'm aligning with the Eightfold Path. I'm aligning with the Four Noble Truths in a way that is going to bring this kind of well-being, the kind of happiness, the happiness of the Buddha, which is not primarily based on conditions. That there's a happiness, a sense of well-being. I prefer well-being to happiness because I never know what that word means to any given person. It's got so many different meanings and understandings, each of us. We're very complex about that. We have love-hate relationship with happiness and everything. But well-being, there's a sense of well-being, a sense of ease, a sense of harmony, a sense of having a coherence in our mind, that we're one, that all of the different aspects of us, which are quite different, but nonetheless there's a whole there. We feel the wholeness of our sense, and we feel connected one moment to the next in our life. There's a sense of well-being. We feel authentic to ourselves. We recognize ourselves, despite all these different aspects showing up with different people and different conditions. We still recognize ourselves as a whole, but we're not so identified with the way we're being in any one moment. We're more identified with this knowing capacity that's knowing what really matters. We're still participating, and we're with our children, we're with our frenemy at lunch who's competes with us, who, when it's our turn to speak, interrupts and speaks again, takes a second turn. Maybe you know a friend like that. And so we're not being something other than we are. It's that we're being more fully who we are with all of this modesty. Each of us come to practice for some motivation, some reason. For some people, people come because they just need a break from their lives. And the meditation, whether you do just a home practice or being here part of Charlotte Sangha or going on retreat, in this moment we have a respite from our regular mind that's doing whatever it usually does. And we also have a respite from our other responsibilities and all of our roles. And we're not in the moments so identified with our roles as mom or dad, son, daughter, whatever it may be, worker, boss, caretaker, whatever it may be. We get a respite from that, and that's really worthwhile. Likewise, we may come because we have a lot of anxiety, and getting present, getting into our bodies really calms down that anxiety. And in fact, when we learn how to be in our body, we will have less anxiety. And the same with trauma. We may have come here because we have a background in trauma, and some other things have helped, but it's not really gotten us to what we really think is our own fullness of our sense of ourselves in this way. And that's why we come. And indeed, it helps with the anxiety. It really helps with trauma. It's not the only thing that helps with trauma, but it helps. We may come because we've had heartbreak of one kind or another about something that's happened to us or something we've done or our, certain defeats we've had in life. And this is the dukkha. All of these are the dukkha, the First Noble Truth. Dukkha meaning the pain, physical and emotional pain, the unsatisfactoriness of experience so often. The fact that experience is always changing and we can never really feel on top of it. All of that may have been why we came, for reasons of the First Noble Truth like that. Or we may have come because a sense of meaninglessness or ennui is set in, just for this kind of, what does all this mean anyway? Or a slight sense of disappointment that uh, that it didn't turn out to be more meaningful. That's brought us here. Or a sense of that there is something to align to. We're inspired to be here. We're seeking purpose. We're seeking meaning, a deeper understanding, a further. It's like a deeper union, a further communion, T.S. Eliot says, and that's what brings us here to practice. And once we're here, those were the vehicles, and there may be more than one of those motivations brought you here. But now you're here. And now that you're here, the invitation is to go, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I find what works for me, what empowers me, what does bring this ability to be in the here and now, so that I'm really being mindful in this very moment. Not, oh, I practice mindfulness. That's a kind of concept. But the mindfulness here and now. I'm going to be a mindful person is an ideal, and it's a wonderful ideal. So we're for that ideal. We're not against it. But our practice is here and now. Am I being mindful in this moment? Am I being available in this moment of my life, whatever soap opera drama is going on, whether it's a small, boring one, like I'm watching TV, and am I available? Am I mindful when I'm watching television? Or, you're dealing with someone in a very delicate situation where, something unfortunate could happen or something really needs to happen that's positive. Am I being mindful here? Mindful of what? Mindful that I'm present and that I have choice, and that that choice can include being skillful in my response. It's here and now. And you're about something. You are walking the path. There is this way of meeting all of the experiences that are arising through any sense gate, smell, taste, touch, the whole gamut, including thinking itself. It's arising in the mind, and what mindfulness does is knows what's arising in the mind, first of all, and then mindfulness, sati, S-A-T-I, can see the surround, and so it can see what's useful and what's not useful. It sees choice, and there's enough resilience to be able to, even though you've kind of been knocked about by whatever, someone said something harsh to you, you just got cut off in traffic, and it could easily have, had you not been paying close attention, you could really have gotten hurt, that you come back to center because you're about something larger than what's arisen in the field of experience. You're in a larger relationship with your life experience. So we're related to all of our experience. We're not becoming separated from our experience that arise in the mind-heart, but rather we're having a wiser relationship and a more caring relationship to it. And none of this involves belief. It's not a belief about anything. It's the Buddha put it, ei passiko, come see for yourself. There's not an ontology to Buddhism. There's no beginning story. There's no Genesis in Buddhism, and there's no end in Buddhism. It's not based on that kind of consideration one way or the other. So you're not being asked to believe anything. You're being asked to experience in a way that empowers your own choice, and those choices certainly fit with the traditional Christian values and a lot of religious values. Some religious values have gone off in their own ways for their own reason, but throughout, if you go with native culture on up, there's a core kind of orientation towards goodness that is there in the religious experience. But Buddhism simply gives you this empowerment if you choose to do it. And for, again, lawful reasons, the mind becomes happy, becomes content, becomes inspired. Again, I'm using that word happy because it's a common word. I'm not using it. I don't mean a specific thing about it. I mean whatever you mean. And then the heart gets more available. It gets available in a way that, you can feel your heart breaking sometimes because you stay present for it. But it doesn't go to deadening. Your heart doesn't get dead. Instead, it breaks open. And this could be about something that happened to you, 10 years ago or 2 months ago. It's going to happen in the future. You're equipping yourself to meet the future in a way that has more wholesome, that you're teaching yourself skillful means. And your teachers are helping you do that. Whatever you read or study is helping you do that too. Skillful means towards wholesome goals. That's the path. That's the path. And again, it's on the street of life. So don't get all caught up in this mean this or that, and, have a sort of contingency practice based on exactly what something means. Go out and have your life experience using these tools, using these perspectives, and see for yourself, and then utilize those still more. It does require effort. It does require effort, but it doesn't require endless effort. It does not. As if we get sustained effort, even at a modest level, that is onward leading. And therefore more effort will arise without our having to demand more effort. And it gets incorporated, again, by the analogy of planting the seed in the ground. You're not making that seed grow. You're not digging it up every day, say, how are you doing? And put it back in the ground. You'd get nowhere if you do that with growing flowers or tomatoes. But rather you are willing to just let it. You're willing to let it be as you're living your values. It's aspirational. It's alignment. It's so different than what we kind of ordinarily think about. So in doing that, there starts to be more psychological health. We get healthier. In my book, Dancing with Life, and the third section, I talk about what's called the third noble truth. And the first thing that happens as we get more liberation is that our ego gets to be a healthier ego. We become better people. That's not the end goal at all, but it just happens because we get healthier. We just get healthier. And that alone feels great. I've actually had students come to me and say, I've spent all this last few years really studying Dharma, but I really feel myself more empowered in terms of being able to meet the world. And I'm actually just going to go out and spend my time in these next few years meeting the world. I want to take another chance at making my mark in the world. And my practice is going to take a big step back because this is what I want to do right now. And I go, great, go do it. Stay mindful, stay true to your values, but go out there and do what your ego wants to do now that it feels empowered enough to do it. And then you'll find out what's the right balance for you. And then eventually we get to the point where it's not just that we're better, we're a good person in the same way, we become more of a good person, or that our ego, our ego doesn't get carried away and cause harm so much. We get to a point where the ego ceases to be in the center. It's not that we've not killed the ego, none of that stuff. From my view, you're hearing one teacher's view, one person who has been with the Dharma for decades, but rather the ego finds its natural place. So the ego cannot be responsible for keeping you alive forever, and yet it thinks it has to. And it's that part of you that gets afraid of death or something. But the ego's not going to keep us alive forever. It doesn't work that way. We all know that. So the ego finds it's more natural place. Your self-esteem becomes more of an internal experience and less dependent on somehow making having people what they think of you. But you become much more because you're living your own values. So people will respect you because you're a values-based person and you're consistent in it. But you're organized around being consistent in it. That's your reward. And then this is like extra cream that other people respect you for it and all. You're not out to impress them. You're out to feel aligned with yourself, to feel this harmony. And that's when this is that kind of first stage, I would say, of liberation, is when there's this kind of freedom that's come, and you don't have you less and less are caught in various kinds of theories about self and about all sorts of things. So the Buddha refers to rituals and all of this. There's just a whole series of things, but it just all starts to come in a natural way. And then what we do is we practice some more. We practice some more. And at first, the practice is over here, and our life's over here. And then, but we're getting that respite, we're getting something from it that then shows up in our life. And then we get to, so now I really want this to show up, with my in-laws. I want this to show up, with the people at work. So now I'm going to bring pieces of it deliberately back. I want to be more kind. I want to be more mindful at work. I want to be more mindful with my in-laws. I want to have more of a kind attitude. I want to have more restraint in the way so I don't get caught in this difficulty with one of my in-laws. I don't want to. So there's a deliberate bringing it back. And then the next stage of that is we go, oh, I really want to make a lot of my life my practice. So yeah, I really want my daily life. It's not just my meditation practice. It's the way I'm relating mind, heart to the moment of my life. And then at some point we realize, oh, life is practice. And the way it makes the most sense is to treat it as practice. Therefore, we don't so over-dramatize, when someone hurts our feelings. We have room to deal with the disappointments of life because it's less about us and it's more about this mystery of how to meet life in this realm, which is a very mixed realm. We call it the opposites, and of gain and loss and pain and pleasure. It's mysterious, How is it that you're supposed to live with all of this? And you start to feel, there's a felt sense of how to live with it with more ease, based on you and your trajectory through it. Your new things emerge, but it's not like you're having to become somebody new. Big changes can occur, but the connectedness, there's still a connectedness. It's more of an expansion in some way. Some things fall away, but it's more of an expansion of this mind, heart, of what you know, your capacity of knowing, and your capacity of heart. So with that, I'd like to take some questions about what your practice is. Anything I've said that you don't understand, or if you want to tell me that you disagree with something I've said. And everybody is welcome as they are with your set of opinions and your set of values. There's not like somebody that's not welcome as part of this. All of our different characteristics. Some of you have a lot of practice, some of you very little. Some of you have a lot of education, some little. There's different skin colors, there's different ethnic backgrounds, there's different psychological capacities. Buddhism doesn't have preference like that. So Everyone is welcome, and all parts of you are welcome. The disgruntled one, the skeptic is welcome. Everybody's welcome. Lots of room. So,
Philip,
yes,
Philip, can I jump in for just 1 minute?
yes,
As to questions, let me tell you the way we normally do it
okay,
and see if this works okay. People can chat in their questions, or they can use the Zoom raise your hand function to be recognized.
okay.
And so I see a couple people have chatted in.
I just opened that. Thank you for telling me. I had not noticed.
Yes.
I've done the volume as best I can. Sorry about that. And how can we bring more trust into our daily meditation practice? Trust is such a good topic. So, what are we trusting? What is it that we're trusting? How much trust do we need? To me, we are trusting that we are possibly capable of doing this practice. We're trusting that this practice has some value, and it seems pretty clear that a number of people get value from it. So we're trusting that is okay, this may be true. And then we're trusting that we too might get some value from it. And we're trusting that we're capable of practicing enough that we could maybe get that value. We do not need a guarantee. We do not. If we trust that it may be true for us, that amount of trust I can see for myself, so I'm willing to invest the time to see. If it's true for me, this is really a good payoff for my time. It's a really worthwhile thing to do, and it doesn't seem to be very harmful, although it does take some of my time. But it seems like that's a good deal, And it's so good that it's well worth the risk. And it seems to have all these secondary benefits that even if what I'm really looking for, I can't know for sure I'm going to get it. I'm for sure going to get some of these other benefits. So it's a good enough trust. It's not an absolute trust. And it's also trusting yourself that you're capable of knowing. I use that deliberately about the Buddha knowing the Dhamma. You're trusting yourself in this way. We can assign an expectation of how much we have to trust, and that means that's how we get our level of commitment. Our commitment can come rather from that, but rather that I really want to know. I really want to know. I really want to know. What is this? And I'm going to make myself available to find out. That curiosity, that I'm being encouraged to align with my values. I don't mind doing that. Although when we get to the specifics, sometimes we squirm. What do you mean that I don't get to, lay into this person that I think treated me wrong? What do you mean? Well, if you're not ready to do that, you go ahead and lay into them. But if there's a moment's pause there, that's a step in the right direction before you lay into them. But so the trust is more, I don't know and I want to know trust. The next question, is it useful to cultivate both a belief and mindfulness? Again, if you mean by belief that I believe it may be possible, which I don't really consider to be a belief, I consider that to be a kind of, you're not believing in something other than your belief to find out for yourself. And that's more of an assessment, a consideration. Than it's not a belief in, somebody's telling you, it's not got a story to it. It's talking about in my capacity as a human being that people are saying these are capacities of you as a human being, and the invitation is to go see for yourself. So you're not really believing in that much in that way. You are believing that your values matter, but life tells you that it takes a while, but you confirm for yourself being a values-based person for me is better than not being a values-based person. And so in a sense, you're believing that you can find that out by living it. And it's hard for us to live out our values in many instances. So we've got to be willing to suffer some, in the moment discomfort. But then you just find it out for yourself. I'm not calling out names. Am I doing that right, Ward, by not saying names?
Feel free to say the names.
Okay. Well, that was Cohen's. Can everybody read the chat for themselves? So then I don't have to do that. And the thing about I once heard a teacher describe trust as knowing that life is about falling, but thankfully there's no bottom. Having had that very experience, I would not call that trust. I would call that your dedication to like what's called bhavana, the becoming of this meditation practice, the cultivation of the sila, the ethics, and the dana, the generosity of spirit and towards others through your metta and your compassion and all that, and then your bhavana, your practice, that whatever moments you're going to get to, they're aligned, and the knowing for that moment of experience arises with the experience. That's the way I would describe it. And then someone says, I like the non-judgmental nature of this type of practice. Yes, indeed. It's not very non-judgmental in that way. So those are the ones I have in my chat for now. So I'd like to have some voices come into the room. If I can ask that someone speak up about your experience. Ruben Sanchez. Your hand is up. Okay, we'll come back to you.
Ruben can unmute. There we go.
Okay, great.
Wait, hang on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you just fine.
Great. Yeah, I've heard various ideas or opinions on this with like compassion in general, where some people will suggest self-compassion first, like almost focusing solely on that. And then I've also heard where I guess more like spread out opinions where like you're not just focusing on yourself, but also compassion for others. Just what's your experience on that?
I would say that there's not a set procedure in that way. It depends on the person. When I was introduced to loving kindness meditation by Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg 30-some years ago, I'd come from a background in Raja Yoga where there was a big emphasis on meditation, and I really I had some great ease in attaining bliss states. And so and I could get really concentrated. So there I'm doing my Buddhist practice as they instructed, getting very concentrated. And then they announced they're going to start this thing called metta practice. And it all sounds very sentimental to me and, gooey and getting all into stories about emotions. And so I literally get up and leave the hall. And I won't go in there the time of day they're doing it. And finally, one day, I would go out and actually run track. We were at a Catholic center, and there was a high school that had a track, and I'd go run track. And while I was running track, I was waiting till the end of the retreat, and I was preparing how I was going to explain to them that this is really not a wise thing to do, to introduce this stuff and run samadhi. And then I thought, well, I better go in there and do this so I can say, no, I really tried. And so I go in there to try. I go in there totally to do the practice Metta means loving kindness practice. There's 4 of these Brahma Vihara, heavenly abode practices. Loving kindness, which is a kind of friendness, and then compassion practice, which is the heart's response. The Buddha called it the heart's quiver to suffering of others. And then sympathetic joy, being truly happy for someone else's happiness as though it were your own, but it's not your own. You're not confused about that. And then equanimity. Those are the 4. So I go in there and I do the metta practice. And the very first time I do it, by this point, they're not doing metta for themselves anymore. They're doing it for others. I go, gosh, this isn't sentimental. This is great. So I go through wherever they've started the instructions, and then at the end of the time, they bring it back to saying metta for yourself. I close down. It feels selfish. I get a little ashamed that I'm going to do metta for me. I just like, it took me a year and a half to be able to, with freedom, do metta for myself. So I'm not the kind of person that should have started with myself, obviously, but I gradually worked my way into it. And it had to do, growing up in very difficult circumstances, and the only way I was going to survive was a kind of harsh demand of myself. That any kind of that feeling would have been that I could not have survived. I had to be very tough to keep my mind intact. And so it just wouldn't have worked for me. But for you, it might be exactly where to start. And what you do is you try it out. You try metta practice, you try compassion practice, and you get you feel your way into what practice works for you. Sharon Salzberg's book's so good about all of that. There's endless tapes on Dharma Seed. I have a website called Dharma Wisdom that's got all sorts of instructions and articles and all of this on it from my own teachings. So you try, but you try over and over again till you see. I didn't wait a year and a half to start doing metta for myself. I tried repeatedly. It just wasn't it took me a while before I would actually use phrases. And then the other thing about metta is that there's a radiating metta, which we don't use the phrases at all, which I don't know if you've been exposed to. And then with compassion, again, it's like for many people, compassion is easier. You don't feel selfish when having compassion for your own suffering the way you can about wishing yourself well. For some people, that difference. People in a Western culture have very complicated feelings about all of that. And so there's not one single answer that way. Does that help, Ruben?
It does. Thanks.
Yeah. Slow and steady. But do experiment. Do give yourself a chance. And now Danny T.
Thank you, Philip. First of all, I want to say I enjoyed your presentation very much. I just wanted to say from my practice over the last 12 years, I had a hard time with the metta in the beginning as well. And what I did notice, though, as I said metta for others, I felt better about me. And it also helped me to sort of flow into saying metta for myself. But I realized that the more I said metta for others, the easier it was for me to say it for myself.
Well, and I had a similar experience, but you didn't have a lag time. I had a big lag time. So I instantly felt better. I loved saying metta for others, but somehow that didn't cross over for the longest time. And again, I think it was just the nature, of my early wound, I don't mean to psychologicalize it or anything. It's not that. That's just a story. But there was in my field, there was something that was a blockage, and it's like going through ice. You're cutting. If you're way down here and the ice is up here, you're cutting through that ice, and you're actually doing pretty well, but you can't see any change at all. So you keep cutting through ice, and you don't have any. What are you trusting? Because you're not getting reinforced. But you go, well, it seems like this is possible, so I'm just going to keep trying and see. And at some point, you break through and you see the light, and then all it comes, and it's like an overnight success that took, 2 years or 20 years, right? and that's part of it. So do you use phrases in your metta, or do you do radiating metta? How do you do your metta? Let's see, you're on mute again.
Should be able to unmute himself. I can't do that.
You can't. Ward, can you unmute?
I'm trying.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I use phrases, and they're the phrases that basically, I first of all say metta for myself. May I be happy, may I be safe and protected, and then I say that for close family members. Then I say it for people that I had not great relationships with, and then for, of course, the entire planet and then the universe as well.
Yeah, and and that's a little different than the original sequence about the whole universe in that way. It's more all beings, but I will say metta for our planet in that way, for the Earth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it really helps. So that's really good to do. It's really great.
Thank you.
Someone else. I'm just wanting to hear your voices since I can't be there.
All right. Looks like.
Okay. All right,
Hey,
women, I'm sorry,
yeah, I just wanted to bounce back and kind of say it's just that's why I wanted to hear your experience, because mine is kind of the opposite, where I don't seem to have I have very limited practice in it, but just in general, it's really easy for me to have self-compassion. But when it comes to others, I really don't want to give it in any way.
right.
Or at least it's I mean, it's more straightforward with close family, but let's say this has been on my mind, if you're just on the highway and then you see this happened in Charlotte, there's some kind of hot spots of homeless people, and you drive past it and you don't really, me personally, I don't really want to even look at it, which doesn't seem right. I'm practicing meditation and then I don't even want to look at those people.
Well, thank you for bringing that in. I'm going to take it on a more personal level. Then I'm going to go back to the groups of people, like the people in really difficult situations, like the homeless. So, for yourself and the people it's a number of people when they start doing the practice have trouble getting any juice in terms of other people, or maybe they can with a few other people, but not many. So I want you to, first of all, not feel like the Lone Ranger, because you're not at all. And then the second thing about that is that's why we cultivate it. And I learned this from this woman who's now dead, but a wonderful woman named Helen Luke. She was a very wise woman. And she was talking about forgiveness. And her teaching was that, because we do forgiveness practice in Buddhism too. And she was not doing this as a Buddhist, but as a Christian, actually. She was saying it's not that you forgive. It's enough that you wish that you forgave, or were available to forgive, and it doesn't even have to be that much. It's enough that you wished that you would forgive. that the turning of the heart is, again, that ocean, the big ocean liner, the slightest connecting of the heart. You learn more and more about in practice how intention is not this big, huge kind of battle, but much more a very subtle inclining of the mind heart. Just this subtle inclining. So Reuben, I would have you do the phrases and being available. May my heart, open to this loving kindness for this person. This is talking about individuals here doing the more traditional practice. Does that make sense to you, what I'm suggesting? It is a value statement you're making, an aspiration statement, not what you actually feel right now. You're doing that based on your values. And then secondly, in terms of the homeless, we turn away from groups of people when it's too much for us. And so if you want to practice in that situation, you can there's a number of different ways to do it. You take one homeless person and you allow that person in some way. And you may find yourself, bringing them a bag of groceries or something, but you take that you can eat on the street, not a bag of groceries that you got to have a place to live and prepare food. But so you start with one person, or you start with the children, or a child, or you start with this. In what way can I acknowledge by some action the existence of the suffering of these people that are like me, or we have. If you can't do that, like I can feel how my heart is. My mind is not strong enough to open my heart yet to this. May my mind become stronger, or may my heart become stronger. You are circumambulating, like at the Mahabodhi temple. You always walk around where the Buddha got enlightened. There's now a temple. You walk all the way around it with your right shoulder always turned towards it, like you're spiraling into it. You're being available for the Dhamma to arise in you. You're being available for your heart to continue to open. You're not demanding it. You're not judging yourself. You're not comparing yourself to other. You're not even trying to fix yourself, but rather you're being available. May my heart become more free. And there's often psychological factors. There's all of these things. You don't have to figure all that out. You're being available, and those factors, those hindrances of mind, we call them, will either reveal themselves in the way of story, or they just as hindrances, and gradually they change. They gradually change. But you're not fixing, you're not judging, you're not comparing. So important. So I'm going to stop with that and turn now to Julie. But again, thank you for bringing it in. So, what are you unmuting?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your talk and guided meditation. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to see if you had any tips. I felt kind of so much more free, and I felt like I got so much more of your guided meditations, and I felt similarly with some other teachers. But I feel like I rarely feel like that when I kind of do my own meditation with just the bells. And I just wanted to ask if it's a timing thing. Like, I've only been practicing for, I'd say, about like 4 or 5 months now. So I don't know if it's something that I should just wait for, or are there specific things that I can do to get closer to that level?
Well, so that's 4 or 5 months would mean that you barely got in the door. So we have very modest. We're cultivating to have a modest attitude. I'm available for whatever comes, but I would recommend that you again, insofar as I'm useful, go to the Dharma Wisdom website and listen to some of my guided meditations, or on Dharma Seed, which these are all freely available on Dharma Seed and on my site, Dharma Wisdom. And you employ, like, you can listen to a guided meditation over a series of days. You don't, because if you only got 15 minutes to meditate, you just listen to 15 minutes of it, or whatever it may be. And so you do that more, and you be really patient with yourself. And then your idea that it's supposed to be a certain way, it's not supposed to be a certain way. It's easier when someone else that knows how to hold the center is holding the center. But again, some people, they don't work for you. They can't hold the center for you. And it's not about them. It's about you and what works for you. It's not about them. So therefore, they don't have to get all caught up in what effect they're having on you, which is very fortunate. And then you have no expectations. You're practicing a form. Like when you're playing scales, the teacher plays scales on a piano like crazy, or the circle of fifths or something like that. But you don't think you're supposed to be able to do that. This little scales, or moving from the fifth to the seventh to the ninth. It takes time, and you're just being available through your practice. You just show up, and then the Dharma slowly does you. That's my advice with that. But I'm really glad you've come to practice, and hope you really give it a chance.
Philip, let me ask. It's about 7 minutes until 9.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if we ought to move on toward announcements and closing.
Well, just to say, you're fortunate to have the teachers there in Charlotte, and to have a whole group of people. This is a lot of people to be interested in. This is not by any means all of your Sangha, and so that's all very fortunate. And so there's a degree where you have to step forward. The teachers have stepped forward, but then you're stepping forward too. And together, that everybody's stepping forward is what keeps the momentum of the Sangha going. And you'll soon hopefully be back in person, maybe the fall or something like that, maybe sooner. Really step forward, and little things that make you feel part of the community really help. Just doing little things where we feel more, having a Dharma buddy that you practice with. If there's a group of you, could do a half day on your own, not with a teacher, but you go to somebody's house and you spend, there's 4 of you, and you spend Saturday morning practicing. You do sitting and walking practice, all of these little things like that. You share a book together. You do things that help you. The Buddha said, Ananda said to the Buddha, I told the monastics that spiritual friendship was an important part of practice. And the Buddha said, oh no, Ananda, don't say it like that. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the path. So this this practice is a community-based practice, at least in the Theravadan tradition, and it really matters. So I really encourage that, and you've got a good group of people to be working with. Now you can do the announcements.
Thank you. So I'll be quick. All of this is on our website. We have a book discussion group that meets on the first Thursday, and Joy leads that. At the present, they're doing Mindfully Facing Disease and Death by Bhikkhu Analayo. On May 19th, David Chernikoff will be our Wednesday night guest leader, and the following Saturday, he'll be leading a day-long on Zoom for us. Our residential retreat, which we're planning as though will be conducted in person, will be August 19th through 22nd. I think those are the key announcements. And there will be a Greenway cleanup project on
May 9th.
On May 9th, Saturday, May 9th at 9:00 at Freedom Park. And also, I want to just say that if we were together in person, we would invite you to, if you would like to provide financial support for Phillip and his work. The newsletter has the information, but there's a site at paypal.me/Life Balance Institute. That's Phillip's organization. Or you can mail a check to P.O. Box 725, Tiburon, California, 94920. And I think you can find that on the website too. Phillip, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence tonight. And we look forward to your next visit.
Well, thank you. I'd like to close with metta. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So, again, being comfortable in your body. And I use 4 phrases that are sort of the traditional that got created through at IMS, but they're altered because I taught in a prison program for 4 years, and I changed them with the inmates in a way that worked for them and their circumstances, and I found them really useful for me and others. And if you're interested in them, you can go to Dharma Wisdom and you can easily find it. So I will say a phrase, and I'm asking you to say it either out loud if you're alone or comfortable to do so, or to just say it silently to yourself. There'll be a very, very brief pause, and then we'll go on to the next phrase. When you're saying the phrase, you're offering friendliness, just being available, giving people the benefit of the doubt, trusting, having an open attitude, having a feeling of connection just because you wish to have connection, not demanding or anything with it. And then when you say the phrase, you're cultivating that feeling. When you hear me saying it to you, you're receiving the phrase. And when you're just to see what it's like are you really available to take others' friendliness towards you? May you be safe from internal and external harm. May you have a calm, clear mind and a peaceful, loving heart. May you be physically strong, healthy, and vital. May you experience love, joy, wonder, and wisdom in this life, just as it is. And now dedicating the merit. May our practice this day and our practice all the days of our lives bring us benefit and bring benefit to all those we love and bring benefit to all of those with whom we come in contact. Any merit, any momentum towards well-being that's arisen from our practice, we share that merit, we share that feeling of well-being directly and indirectly. May all beings be the beneficiary of our practice, directly or indirectly, without demand, without conditions, without preference, without exchange. This is a freely given offering, a free sharing from our hearts to the hearts of all others. May all beings find safety, shelter, and nourishment this day and every day on their path to non-suffering. Thank you so much for having me. I celebrate your practice.